Hello, Canada, and the world at large. This is Lane from Canada. I promise we're going to get into movies that are actually good at some point, but for now we're still wading into even bad movies used to be good. Welcome to Before Movies Sucked, and this is Stargate. Stargate is kind of a strange story. As beloved as it is by a lot of people, it tends to be overshadowed by the success of its spin-off TV series. The other thing that overshadowed the legacy of Stargate was the next movie Roland Emmerich made a couple years later. Stargate kind of slid under the radar and has sadly faded into a bit of obscurity. Plans for sequels never came to fruition, even though Kurt Russell and James Spader both seemed interested. It's really a shame. To me, this will always be Roland Emmerich's greatest movie. It had that great mid-90s balance of practical effects aided by a little CGI, as opposed to the overly computer-animated vomit that would follow in the next couple of decades. The action was great, it was fun, it never felt mean-spirited, and the score is fantastic. They aren't allowed to make movies this good/bad anymore. Can we start by saying I really miss opening credits? I have a sneaking suspicion that I have a touch of OCD, amongst other things, going on in my brain, and the loss of opening credits in movies, especially summer blockbusters, still galls me. So many of them were nothing more than a black screen, white words, and some of the best original scores you've ever heard. Opening credits were a time for the movie to boast of what it had accomplished and the great people who had assembled to bring it to you, cast and crew. Above all, it was a chance for the composer to shine, and there are few greater examples of this than Stargate. This movie was my introduction to David Arnold, one of the more underappreciated composers in Hollywood, and his credit score on Stargate remains his finest work to this day. Everything about this sequence is great. The camera panning over the Pharaoh's mask, which you can't quite identify until the very end, combined with an ominous rising score that reaches crescendo with one of my all-time favorite choral sections. Dang it, real movies, I miss you. We kick off in Giza, Egypt, in 1928. A young Catherine Langford and her archaeologist father uncover ancient Egyptian cover stones. These would normally indicate an important buried tomb underneath, but they instead conceal a massive alien portal covered with strange symbols and constructed from an unknown mineral. Catherine also finds an amulet bearing the Eye of Ra, which looks rare and valuable, and she immediately goes kleptomaniacal on it. Her sin is never punished or referenced. Meanwhile, the Giza vendor has to explain to his kids why there won't be any Christmas this year. In the present day, an elderly Catherine finds young Egyptologist Dr. Daniel Jackson. This was 1994, and this was my introduction to the glory that is James Spader, an actor who truly has aged like wine. Daniel has been defunded and publicly ridiculed for his theory that the Great Pyramid of Giza was not built in the 4th Egyptian dynasty by Pharaoh Khufu. He argues that it is the only pyramid, or major Egyptian architecture of any kind, to have 0 hieroglyphics inside, and insists that the pyramid is much older than is believed, perhaps predating Egyptian writing systems. He is reminded that quarrymen's inscriptions were found in the pyramid that included the name of Pharaoh Khufu, discovered in the late 1830s by Colonel Howard Weiss. However, Daniel insists that this discovery was fraudulent. Hey, for the record, Daniel's right on this one. Khufu was a pissant pharaoh who nobody seemed to like, and he left virtually no historical record. Hardly the glorious majesty that would have been needed to create the largest structure the world has ever seen. There's like 2.5 million cut stones in the Great Pyramid. They weigh anywhere from 2 to 50 tons each, and if you disassembled the whole thing, you could build a wall 2 feet high and 10 centimeters wide, which would wrap around the planet at the equator. That's 24,901 miles. To say that cute little Khufu built that in as little as 12 years is retarded when we couldn't build that sucker in 50 years with all of Earth's modern construction technology combined. Colonel Weiss was full of crap. Anywho, Catherine and an entourage from the Air Force Special Operations Command hire Daniel for a secretive job translating Egyptian hieroglyphs. With no other options, Daniel agrees and is taken to a secret military installation in Colorado. He's amazed by the cover stones that Catherine's father discovered, but is unable to translate a number of unknown figures. The classic hieroglyphs he is able to translate indicate that the stones marked the burial site of an artifact associated with the Egyptian sun god Ra. He determines that the object was called a Stargate, but when he asks what was buried under the stones, he is told that the information has been classified by holy crap, look at that haircut! More notable film reviewers than myself have previously made a big deal of a certain 1982 film featuring
Kurt Russell and his epic beard. Kurt Russell and his beard wants some answers. Even Kurt Russell and his beard can't take it down. And luckily, Kurt Russell and his beard are on hand to burn him up.
I concede that the epicness of Kurt Russell's beard cannot be understated, but allow me to offer 1994's consolation prize, Kurt Russell and his flat top. My male pattern baldness kicked into hyperdrive when I was in my late 20s, and us soulless gingers typically have a lower hair count to begin with. Me and a bottle of Rogaine have been waging the war on baldness ever since, so I'm hoping God won't begrudge my envy of Kurt Russell's hair, cranial or facial. Wait, first I reviewed Laura Linney in Congo and now Kurt Russell? Am I just drawn to people who have epic dimples? Kurt Russell and his flat top symbiotically fused together in order to create Colonel Jack O'Neill, a brooding, teeth-gritting testosterone factory, albeit one tormented by the memory of his young son who tragically died by accidentally shooting himself, presumably with Jack's gun. He's been brought out of retirement to assume command of the Stargate project for reasons he won't disclose, and refuses to share details of the operation with Daniel. Still in the dark regarding what he's dealing with, Daniel is assigned to spend the next few weeks attempting to decipher what the 6 unknown symbols on the cover stones are, and eventually realizes that they represent star constellations, which, when properly aligned, can chart a course. After he identifies a final, hidden symbol, he's finally permitted to see the Stargate, which the military believes to be an interstellar portal between habitable worlds. By aligning all 7 symbols on the Stargate in a specific sequence, a wormhole is opened in the gate in the form of a shimmering wall of water. An unmanned probe is sent through and tracked to a planetary body in a distant galaxy. A few readings and images are transmitted back through the gateway before the Stargate shuts down and contact is lost. Atmospheric readings show the planet has a breathable atmosphere compatible with our own. Although the images clearly show a second Stargate, the symbols on it differ from the one on Earth. Daniel claims he can still determine the correct order of alignment from the other side, and nobody questions that! As a token of appreciation, Catherine gifts Daniel her Eye of Ra amulet. So Jack, Daniel, and 6 soldiers form the first manned expedition across the universe, zipping through the world's funnest roller coaster to the alien planet in a matter of seconds. They find themselves in a temple-like structure with architecture similar to that of ancient Egypt. The terrain is a vast desert of shifting dunes, and they are shocked to discover a nearly identical copy of the Great Pyramid beyond the temple, seemingly validating Daniel's theory that the pyramid was not an Egyptian creation. Jack almost immediately orders his men and Daniel to return to Earth, but seems to imply that he will not be coming with them, confusing the soldiers. However, Daniel admits that he cannot successfully activate the new Stargate without a written order of alignment, similar to the sequence found on the cover stones back on Earth. However, no such sequence has been found in the temple, and he suspects the pyramid will be consistent with the one in Giza, with no writings to help them. With no other choice, Jack orders his men to set up camp and secretly begins assembling a mysterious device. Daniel discovers a mastage, an alien beast of burden that he believes is domesticated as it is wearing a harness. However, as he overconfidently shouts this information back to Jack, the creature spooks and stampedes, dragging the hapless Daniel behind, tangled in its lead shank. Jack, along with Lieutenant Kowalski and Airman Brown, are forced to pursue them a long way through the dunes. Daniel regains consciousness just as the soldiers catch up with him, only to discover that the mastage has led them back to its familiar territory, a mining camp worked by primitive humans. Seeing Daniel's amulet, the villagers immediately assume that they are emissaries of Ra and pay homage to them. Although Daniel cannot understand their language, Brown determines that the people are mining the same material that the Stargate is made of. They are invited to the local village by tribal leader Kasuf and his 2 grown children, adventurous son Skara and shy daughter Shauri. Holy crap! Mealy Avatal is smoking like the best kind of beef brisket. A desert storm forces them to shelter in the village, while the remaining soldiers are forced to abandon base camp and retreat into the temple. While being given a royal reception, Daniel frightens Kasuf by attempting to communicate with him using written hieroglyphs, as all forms of writing are forbidden to the villagers. In an effort to placate and distract Daniel, Kasuf gifts Shauri to him, and we get a slight bit of side boob, so no complaints from me. Fortunately, Daniel is a gentleman, but can't disgrace Shauri by turning her away, since he hasn't yet determined if this is one of those cultures that drowns unwanted daughters in the bathtub. So he instead spends the night attempting to communicate with her, something that far too many first dates seem to gloss over these days. Realizing that Shauri has seen symbols like the ones on the Stargate, he convinces her to show him a cave where the writings are hidden. In the process, he unlocks the key to her language, a divergent form of ancient Egyptian, and is able to begin speaking with her. As the storm rages, a massive pyramid-shaped spaceship arrives at the temple, which dwarfs the pyramid which it uses as its landing base. A bunch of humanoid troops who are reminiscent of the Egyptian gods Horus and Anubis are able to teleport into the temple and quickly subdue the soldiers. Their stealth against the Special Forces soldiers is impressive, and let's just also say that the ancient Egyptian gods had an enviable workout routine.
You more shredded than a Julian salad, man.
Thanks, yeah.
What's the secret, dude?
Poro and Riley are killed, while Ferretti and Freeman are taken captive into the spaceship. Freddy almost sees Cardi B emerging from a rejuvenating sarcophagus before a Birdman knocks him out again. Skara and his half-wit friend Nabe help Jack track down Daniel and Shari to the cave, since this was a time when half-wit friends were allowed to be in movies without being the magical, mystical key to everything.
Matt Damon!
Cave paintings reveal that the deity Ra, who the villagers worship, is in fact an alien creature from an advanced but dying race. Thousands of years ago, he parasitically possessed a young human boy on Earth in order to extend his own life, as his technology is advanced enough to maintain himself within a human form indefinitely. The sarcophagus that Freddy witnessed is a machine that renews Ra in his human body. The villagers' ancestors were originally from Earth, enslaved and brought to the alien planet in order to mine the mysterious mineral, which is the basis of all of Ra's technology. Thousands of years before Egyptian society began, the humans on Earth revolted and buried the Stargate, effectively banishing Ra. Ra forbade the villagers from reading and writing, hoping that they would forget their origins and the history of the rebellion. Kowalski discovers a hidden cartouche with the properly aligned symbols they have been looking for, but the stone has been degraded over thousands of years, leaving the seventh symbol unreadable. Frustrated that they still have no chance of reactivating the gate, Jack orders his team to return to the temple. Skara and his half-wit friend Nabe secretly follow them. Arriving at the temple, the team is shocked to discover the spaceship still mounted on the pyramid. Entering the temple, they are immediately attacked by the alien troops. Brown is killed while Jack, Daniel, and Kowalski are captured. They are teleported to the spaceship's throne room, where it is revealed that the Anubis and Horus troops are humans working for Ra, who appears to them in the form of a young man who does not have an enviable workout routine and prefers a prepubescent domestic staff. However, he does have flowing hair that shines like sea beams glittering in the dark near the town Hazard Gate. So that's something. Ra reveals that the mystery device Jack was assembling is an atomic bomb and accuses the team of coming to kill him. Jack attacks Anubis, Ra's dog-headed top goon, and attempts to kill Ra, but cannot bring himself to fire when the children protectively shield him. In the firefight, Daniel is shot and killed, and Jack is recaptured. Ra then dispatches smaller fighter ships to punch the villagers with random strafing runs, killing many of them. Ra resurrects Daniel in the sarcophagus and tells him that he plans to punish the team by sending their bomb back through the Stargate with a shipment of the mysterious mineral, which will amplify the blast 100 times and destroy Earth. He then orders Daniel to execute his comrades, or Ra will continue to randomly kill the villagers. The villagers are called to witness the execution, but Shari tells Skara and his half-wit friend Nabe their true history that she learned from Daniel, and the young villagers arm themselves with the soldiers' weapons from the abandoned base camp. They manage to discreetly get Daniel's attention before he can execute Jack and the soldiers. Daniel abruptly turns on Ra's soldiers, and the young villagers help the team escape, although Freeman is killed in the melee. In hiding, Daniel demands that Jack come clean. Jack admits to his two surviving soldiers, Kowalski and Freddy, that his plan was to send the team home and then blow up the Stargate to protect Earth from the threat of alien invasion. He plans to intercept the bomb and stop Ra's plan to destroy Earth. In private, Daniel questions why Jack would come to another world, knowing that he was leaving his home and life behind forever. Jack confesses the death of his son, but Daniel helps him realize that he still has a duty to save his men, and they now share a duty to the enslaved villagers who have befriended them. Oh yeah, and Daniel realizes that he and Shari were actually married without either of their consents. Turns out they don't mind.
Down with the patriarchy.
In the morning, Daniel realizes that the planet moons are represented on the Stargate in one of the symbols, concluding that it must be the unknown seventh symbol needed to get them home. The team hijacks the shipment of mineral en route to the temple, killing a black guy in the process. Kasuf and the villagers are horrified and begin praying for Ra's mercy, but Daniel removes the dead goon's Horus disguise, showing Kasuf that the gods they have feared are only men. The team then covertly enters the temple with the mineral shipment.
How you doing?
Wow, imagine that. Scrappy resistance composed of truly selfless heroes, most of them armed only with the skill of moral responsibility. Outmanned and hopelessly outgunned, they decide to risk it all on a suicide mission to save one world from annihilation by terrorists, and to save another from thousands of years of enslavement. That's the kind of noble messaging that has surely resonated through the minds of modern screenwriters and graced countless of their finished products.
Have to stop calling them terrorists.
There's still people in there.
This is the only language these people understand.
You've got to do better, Senator. You've got to step up.
So there's a huge battle royale at the temple as Jack, Daniel, and Shuri fight their way to the Stargate, where they resecure the bomb. The others are trapped outside the temple, and Skara's half-wit friend Nabe demonstrates why a well-regulated militia still needs to have strict exclusionary recruitment standards. Jack tells Daniel to take Shuri to safety through the Stargate, but he still plans to stay behind and detonate the bomb. Suddenly, they are ambushed by a surviving Horus soldier, and Shuri is killed. Desperate to save her, Daniel sees that the teleportation device which links the temple to the spaceship is activating, and takes Shuri into its path, transporting them both to Ra's ship.
Jackson! Wait for me.
Oh yeah, and then this happens. Still one of my all-time favorite fight scenes. Roland Emmerich would be more respected than he currently is if he'd stuck with content like this instead of deciding that genocide is the key to everything. The survivors outside the temple are forced to surrender as they run out of ammunition, and Ra's troops prepare to execute them. Oh yeah, and then this happens. Daniel uses Ra's sarcophagus to resurrect Shuri, but Ra captures them at the teleportation device. He begins nuking Daniel's brain, gloating that he and Shuri will die together. Oh yeah, and then this happens!
Give my regards to King Tut, asshole.
Best one-liner ever. With Daniel and Shuri safe, Jack tries to turn off the bomb, but finds Ra has rigged it to be unstoppable. Realizing that he's lost control of the planet, Ra attempts to flee into space, but is ultimately killed when Jack and Daniel teleport an atom bomb right into his face. Celebrating their victory and the villagers' freedom, the soldiers return home, with Jack finally making peace with his son's death. Daniel chooses to remain behind on the alien planet because he has a melee avatar there. What can I say? I love this movie. I've honestly been trying to remember if I'd ever seen a Kurt Russell movie before Stargate, and the only one I can think of is maybe Captain Ron. It was definitely the first time I'd seen James Spader, and to this day I tend to associate the two actors and wish that they team up in another movie. A socially inept dweeb and a soldier who eats iron filings like breakfast cereal are as mismatched a pair as you will ever see on screen, but the chemistry between them is fantastic. It feels like the most natural thing in the world when the dweeb and the soldier stand side by side with guns blazing during the heroic finale. One is following a lifetime of elite training combined with near-suicidal abandon, while the other is just following what needs to be done to protect innocent lives and the woman he loves. Either way, it's two equal heroes who are standing eye to eye at the end. Kurt Russell and James Spader own this movie, and their respective screen time is perfectly balanced, a problem that many movies with dual leads still struggle with. Back in 1994, CGI technology was scrambling to catch up with Jurassic Park, but it was still costly and ineffective for most shots. So when it was used exactly the way CGI is meant to be used. Enhancing existing practical effects. Write that down. There's a lot of small touches in the film that I appreciate, such as this scene where Skara shows his half-wit friend Nabe and the others a Zippo lighter that Jack gave him as a gift. There's no subtitles translating what they're saying. I'm not against subtitles, I definitely prefer them over dubbing in foreign language films, and Steven Spielberg was frankly a woke idiot for not including them in West Side Story, which bombed at the box office. But in this scene, they're not needed. The tone and body language of the teenagers says it all. You can practically smell how smug Skara is feeling to be in possession of what he considers to be a magical gift of fire from the gods. The mustache is another great touch, an easily spooked but otherwise friendly monster that looks like a Tibetan yak, and one of the Euro mystics from The Dark Crystal had too much wine one night. They're like the ultimate multi-purpose critter, equally good for riding across the dunes, working as a beast of burden, and apparently even bloodhound tracking, as shown when Skara and Jack are able to track down the missing Daniel by letting the animal sniff his jacket. I also love that the mustache seems to develop a soft spot for Daniel immediately after nearly dragging him to his death. enthusiastically licking and nuzzling him to wake him up, and even following him around the dunes later on. And don't forget that chicken warthog pangolin that Kasuf serves to the soldiers. Look at that thing! Look at those legs! You're telling me you wouldn't want to see an animatronic of that waddling around in a sequel? Let's make it happen, fans. Roger Ebert, one of the few film critics I thoroughly respected, may he rest in peace, hated this movie. Which is weird because I've only hated almost everything else that Roland Emmerich has made, as he quickly established himself as the undisputed cinematic master of joyful genocide. Well, at least this phase was better than his more recent and far more cold-blooded, gotta get that sweet, sweet Chinese green phase.
Plus, the Chinese are offering their prototype moonlander.
Our Chinese friends have jerry-rigged the onboard systems.
福乐长官，咱们去练习零重力加油吧。
好的，好的，我来了。
Wow, it's getting good.
驾驶者，快！
Screw the CCP! But whatever. After kicking off every world war, we can't really expect an influential German guy to get it right every time. The good news is that before both of these phases, Roland Emmerich went through a flag-waving American patriotism phase.
America, America. Terrorists, your game is through, 'cause now you have to answer to America.
Welcome to Earth.
And it was during this phase that he gave us Stargate, his first movie to feature only attempted joyful genocide. And he has my undying thanks for that. But could he make Stargate today? Let's ask the blue-haired people! The white savior narrative is so strong with this one that a heroic black guy named Brown has to unceremoniously die.
Daniel. I'm Daniel.
Sherry.
The inconvenient truth that love is consistently found in arranged marriages formed without the consent of the bride, which statistically also have the greatest longevity when compared to the Western standard.
You guys!
Androgynous long-haired character who exclusively surrounds itself with children it did not sire is evil. A successful military is not a diverse and inclusive organization open to anyone who feels like they're a qualified applicant based upon their own standards of physical, mental, and emotional fitness. And that's a good thing.
My pronouns are she and her, and I am a woman of color!
I thought you were one of the other cleaning.
Scenes that exist solely because Israeli actress Mili Avital is hotter than a lava monster's taco night. Toxic masculinity, heck yeah!
Bullying.
The Me Too movement against sexual harassment.
Toxic masculinity.
Is this the best a man can get?
I've got an idea.
There's good movies, there's bad movies, there's dumb fun movies, there's even bad movies used to be good movies, and then there's the perfect popcorn movies. Stargate probably falls somewhere into all of these categories. But while you're watching it, you're cheering and you leave the end credits grinning. That used to be all we expected from our movies, that's all they had to deliver to succeed, and they still managed to be memorable decades later. It's almost as if the people who made movies used to know that everyone's life is filled with suffering, loss, frustration, and disappointment, no matter what our race, sex, or heritage might be. It's almost as if they knew that their primary and most lucrative purpose was to provide us with escapism, a secret little trapdoor in life that allowed us to metaphorically undermine its problems for 89 to 120 minutes, and hopefully come out the other end refreshed and inspired. Any day of the week, I'll take that creepy little crawl space over the inescapable mallet of messaging that movies somehow morphed into. And that's why I say, thank God for movies like Stargate. Anyway, should Christ tarry, I'll see you in the next video. Jesus loves you. Vote Lane for King of Canada. That sweet, sweet Chinese green comes stained with the red blood of millions of innocent Chinese civilians. And let's make movies great again.
I'll be seeing you around. Dr. Jackson?